In a dramatic and historic operation overnight, the United States launched air and submarine strikes on 3 critical nuclear sites in Iran, marking the official entry of the United States into the ongoing conflict. U.S. warplanes targeted the Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear facilities, sites long believed to be central to Iran's nuclear weapons program. The attacks, described as precise and devastating, have caused significant damage to these underground complexes. The heavily fortified Fordow site is built deep into a mountain, while Natanz houses a larger enrichment plant which Israel also struck several days ago, and a third site near Isfahan where Iran is believed to keep near weapons-grade uranium. U.S. President Donald Trump gave the order to strike and put to use for the very first time the U.S.'s most advanced weaponry, the B-2 stealth bombers and the so-called bunker busters, the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. Trump has called for the unconditional surrender of the Iranian regime and warned Tehran not to escalate. But so far, Iran's leadership has vowed retaliation. As such, hours after the strike, Iran launched a massive missile barrage against Israeli civilians. Several sites throughout central and northern Israel were impacted, but there are no fatalities. And so, as the first light of dawn broke over the Middle East, one truth became indisputable. The Ayatollah regime, which has fueled instability and terror for decades, is now facing its reckoning. And the possibility of a new era in the Middle East, one free from the stranglehold of the Iranian regime, has never been closer. And now for more on the U.S. attack against Iran's nuclear facilities, let's go to this report by ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
President Donald Trump confirmed that American forces launched a coordinated military assault on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities on Saturday, what he called a spectacular success. The strikes targeted Fordow, buried deep in Iran's mountains, Natanz, the country's best-known enrichment plant, and Isfahan, home to vast nuclear infrastructure. According to a U.S. official, the operation involved stealth B-2 Spirit bombers, fighter jets, and at least 6 bunker-busting bombs dropped directly on Fordow. The 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrator, known as the MOP, is designed to destroy deep underground bunkers. More than 30 Tomahawk missiles were launched from U.S. submarines from some 400 miles away at Natanz and Isfahan. Trump later posted on Truth Social that the Fordow site received a full payload. All aircraft returned safely. In remarks from the White House, Trump threatened further military action if Iran does not agree to peace. He said if they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. The decision to strike followed stalled nuclear talks in Europe. That the real question now is whether the strikes bring Iran closer to the negotiating table or push them toward full nuclear breakout. While most Republicans praised Trump's action as a bold move to protect Israel and U.S. interests, several Democrats condemned it as unconstitutional. Others, like Representative Richie Torres and Senator John Fetterman, voiced rare bipartisan support, calling the strike necessary to prevent nuclear escalation. Some people believe Trump's move was foreshadowed by a Truth Social post last week, where Mike Huckabee's letter to the president compared the decision to Truman's use of atomic bombs and encouraged Trump to, quote-unquote, listen to heaven.
I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East, God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
And this morning, Iranian missile fire made direct impacts in several different locations across the country. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian is at the scene of one of the most destructive sites from the morning. To give us more info, Shosh, what can you tell us?
Lidar, on the scene of, once again, a completely devastated residential neighborhood here in the Tel Aviv area. Absolute pure destruction from what we are seeing in this specific tiny little neighborhood that only has about 8 different apartment buildings inside of it. The entire facade of the building came crumbling down. You can see everyone's belongings on the inside of this property. We were told that the protected space at the bottom of this floor here is completely untouched. Unbelievable. We know about 20 people were injured. Some of them were actually pulled from this rubble right here, but none of them are said to be in serious condition. We also know that the bomb shelter across the street that you're looking at right now is completely untouched as well. This is also where residents ran as soon as the sirens sounded.
And you can see the sheer destruction of the infrastructure of these homes, but what you may notice of this house right here, and it's a perfect example that while this entire home is destroyed, there's one room left standing, and that's the room that the family ran into. And while they were injured a bit from the blast, they came out of here alive. They walked out on their feet, and the room is still standing because they listened to the instructions of Homefront Command. They stayed in their protected shelter. You can see here on this side, this massive building that's been destroyed. Everybody ran downstairs to their bomb shelter, and we pulled everybody out. Our first responders quickly arrived here. We started pulling people out. The Homefront Command arrived. We started moving rubble together, and our bomb squads removing the missile debris that was left over. And luckily, the injuries that were out of here were very minimal compared to what could have been when you look at the damage that's surrounding us right now.
As you can see, another devastating day for Israelis. Hundreds of more people now displaced, having to pick up their life, pick up the pieces to restart something new. Nearly everything is destroyed. Everything is gone here.
Thank you, Shosh, for the report. And shortly after the U.S. concluded its strikes in Iran, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke with President Trump. A White House official said that the U.S. gave Israel a heads up before it set out on the mission.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace.
And now this is a moment to stand strong with Israel. In times of great challenge, true support is measured by action. You can go to israelbonds.com now to invest in Israel bonds. Your investment is more than financial. It's a declaration of support as Israel defends freedom, life, and the values we all hold so dear. Investing in Israel bonds is a decisive way to stand with Israel, not just in word, but in commitment. Let the world see where you stand. Israel is not alone. You can invest in Israel bonds today at israelbonds.com. And joining us now for a special panel discussion on this dramatic and historic day, our Colonel in the Reserves, Miri Eisen from the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University, Norman Rule from United Against a Nuclear Iran, and Professor Meir Litvak, head of the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. Thank you all for joining us today. Miri, I'd like to start with you. You know, what do we know so far about the U.S. strikes? Are we able to say now that Iran's nuclear program has been wiped out?
I don't know that we can use the term wiped out. I can say that the United States, and they just did a very big press conference about it, certainly attacked it with a type of capability that I have not seen before. This idea of bringing in both the bombers themselves, the type of munitions that were used, coming in the way that they did, they certainly put at it the immense firepower that we've been talking about, I'll say even for years, certainly in the last 10 days, that they are the game changer. We're not going to know what the results are. It takes time to understand that. A day, two, they've certainly damaged them heavily, but I can't say that they've been wiped out.
And Norman, I want to turn to you. What can we expect now of the United States? Was this a one-time bombing, or are they going to continue assisting in this war?
Good afternoon to you, to the fellow panel members, and to your viewers. The nature of the American attack was extraordinary. The munitions involved are the most sophisticated and advanced conventional weapons in the U.S. inventory. It would be extraordinary if anything of consequence survived in the Iranian target set. If something has survived, then you can expect a follow-on attack if it's deemed necessary, but I see this as very unlikely. The U.S. follow-on attacks on additional targets would depend upon Iran's response. If Iran were to expand the war to U.S. targets in the Gulf or U.S. targets elsewhere, there is no question in my mind that President Trump would order retaliation against Iran. So in this instance, Iran's actions will dictate the course of America's future involvement.
Interesting. And Amelia, back to you. Despite the U.S. strike, the IDF, even at this hour, is continuing to hit Iranian military and nuclear facilities. What happens now in terms of the IDF? I mean, what more does Israel need to do to eliminate the overall threat from the Iranian regime?
The Israeli Defense Forces, mainly with the Israeli Air Force, the IAF, have been attacking 5 different types of targets. One of them is the nuclear. What the United States did early this morning makes certainly the main focus of the nuclear moot, as Norman said. It's hard to believe anything's left there, but there are additional nuclear sites, and Israel was attacking them as well. But I'll focus for a moment on the other 4 types of targets, because we've been attacking all of them for the last 10 days, and we will continue to attack them in the meantime. One is you have to attack the air defense systems, meaning you have to keep the air superiority. That's something that's going to be ongoing. The second is that we are attacking both the missile launch sites, the drone launch sites, and that's a whole ongoing aspect. We've been mainly attacking missiles and drones that can reach Israel. Iran still has lots of capabilities of rather what I'm going to call short-range missiles and others that could attack both U.S., other allies in the area, but they don't have the same ranges to Israel. But what we're also attacking is the industrial facilities that are making both the missiles, the weaponization, the different aspect of the drones to really push that Iranian military industry that has been so broad, pushing it back. So I've already given you 3 more types of targets. Last but not least at all, Israel has been directly attacking the commanders, the decision makers of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in a very broad sense. Those who command the missiles, the drones, those who both command, develop, and would have been the future of that nuclear capability, those who are responsible for the connections with the different proxies of sending all of the weaponry to the proxies. So I just gave you a whole list of targets, which is long enough for us to continue to be attacking in Iran as long as we have this air superiority for a time period, to continue with the nuclear if need be, but also to continue missiles, installations, air industry, and especially the commanders.
Absolutely, a long list of targets, and the IDF spokesperson said just today that Israel is prepared for a prolonged operation. Now, Professor Litvak, I want to turn to you. I want to ask you what's happening now inside of Iran. We know there's almost no internet for some time now, but can you maybe give us an idea of what is happening inside the country today?
I would make a distinction between the regime and the people. I think the UN regime is in a very serious trouble. They're very serious dilemma. Their entire strategy, which they've been building for 20 years or more, 30 years, has collapsed. Now the nuclear project is set back, not completely destroyed, by the way, but set back. The proxies strategy has failed, and the ballistic missiles are not very successful. So now Iran, from its point of view, finds itself in a way defenseless and also humiliated. That puts the regime in a very serious dilemma and a quandary. Now, the Iranian people, I think, I would say there is probably a mixture of great anxiety, fear, shortages of fuel, maybe even of food in some places, the sense that things are going on very badly. At the same time, it is possible, but we cannot know because everything is shut down, that because of an external attack, there may be some popular rallying behind the regime. But I also believe that many Iranians ask themselves, why has Iran squandered tens of billions of dollars in the past 20 or 30 years on proxies and on weapons that eventually, when the day came, they failed? That may have long-term repercussions in Iran. There's also another issue which we cannot know at the time being, whether or not the barrier of fear from the regime, that is, many people in Iran loathe the regime. They want a change, but they're afraid to come out to the streets because of this regime has been very effective and very brutal in suppressing popular protests. It is possible that because of that attack, because the regime suffered humiliation, this aura of power of the regime will be weakened, and that may embolden people to act. At the same time, you could say that the regime, feeling threatened, feeling humiliated, may now react much more forcefully, much more brutally against any sign of protest. So therefore, in this sense, we cannot tell right now. It's too early to say what will be the impact on the popular responses or the population attitudes toward the government.
And Professor Litvak, I want to come back to you in a moment about what's going on inside of Iran. Norman, I want to turn to you. I want to also ask about the response to U.S. involvement from both within the United States and the international community. Russia and China have condemned this strike. That's not a surprise. So has the UN Secretary General. Also not a surprise. But the U.S. and Israel really are ridding the world of a major nuclear threat. So what is the reaction that you're seeing to this in the United States, as well as in the Gulf states and internationally?
Well, within the United States, there is a political aspect to this. Some Democratic leaders have come out against the action, stating that the president lacked the authority to undertake this military operation without congressional approval, and that they will pursue action against the president, perhaps up to impeachment. It's very unlikely to succeed. That is not unexpected. Internationally, the statement by the United Nations, which has had no practical impact against the Iranian issue for many, many years, is expected. Russia and China are allies of the Iranians, and they have protected Iran in all international fora. But they're very unlikely to join Iran, say, with military support or other action which would stand in the way of the ongoing military operations. So I think it's the United States and Israel which will continue the initiative. Now, within the Gulf, they do not want to see this expand to a regional conflict. They have enormous equities which are at stake. Chaos in Iran would bring terrible consequences for the region. It is one thing to have Iran's nuclear program destroyed and its missile program reduced, but beyond that, there are powerful commercial, economic, and political equities they need to consider. There is a significant diplomatic initiative by all GCC states to contain the violence, to lower the temperature. Whether or not it will succeed, we'll see, but they are in communication with all parties, to include Iran, urging restraint.
Absolutely. And Professor Litvak, I want to go back to, despite the devastating U.S. strikes that we've seen, the U.S. having entered the war, the Ayatollah regime does not seem to be backing down. They have threatened retaliation, and we know, as you mentioned, that they are essentially hanging on by a thread, and it can go either way inside Iran. So what game are they playing at? Are they more likely to cut their losses, reach some kind of agreement now, or are they really intent on going up against the force of the United States Army?
Well, first of all, I cannot predict, but I would say the Iranian regime is smart enough to know that they cannot go to a full-scale war against the US, despite all the rhetoric. At the same time, as a dictatorship, they cannot be humiliated, because if a dictatorship is humiliated, then its power base inside the country is shaken or is threatened. Therefore, they will probably try to respond in some way, but at the same time, not to go to full-scale war. And I would guess that they would also have to ask themselves, to reconsider the entire strategy. It is possible, conceivable, that they will decide maybe to rush toward nuclear capability. That is, despite the blows that they have suffered, that they have no other choice because all their other strategy had failed, or that they may decide not today or tomorrow, but let's say in a while, that they have no other choice, that they have to, as Ayatollah Khomeini said, to drink the chalice of poison and reach some agreement with the US, now in much worse terms than could have gotten 3 weeks ago. And again, everything is open.
Absolutely. Now, Miri, I want to turn back to you. Israel is continuing to fight this war against Iran, of course, but we can't forget that Israel is also fighting a war in Gaza. How is the war in Iran impacting IDF operations in Gaza? And also, are we going to possibly see Iran's other proxies like Hezbollah joining in the war effort now on behalf of Iran?
I'll start with the second half because in its own way, it's easier. Hezbollah, and I don't know a lot of Yiddish, has done bupkis for the last 10 days. And this was the Iranian invested main proxy, that the capabilities that the Islamic regime gave to Hezbollah over a period of 20 years were supposed to be the immediate response just in case somebody would attack on the Iranian soil. Zero, nothing, absolutely nothing. Not since June 13th and not since this morning, since the US came in. So that answers on Hezbollah. That has to do with what Israel did against Hezbollah's capabilities last year. It has to do with us achieving, in that sense, a real degradation of those capabilities, and in the aftermath of that, making sure that the Islamic regime could not resupply Hezbollah. When it comes to the fighting in the Gaza Strip against Hamas, against Islamic Jihad, when it comes to our 50 hostages, and it's now 50, 3 more were brought back today, 3 more bodies were brought back today. When we talk about those, I'm much more somber. There aren't, what can I say, smoking, it's not a question of a smoking gun. There are no real surprises on what the IDF can do against the Hamas and the Gaza Strip. But to be very clear, the not even humiliation, but the vulnerability that Professor Litvak spoke about that has to do with what was shown about Iran weakens Hamas as well, because the heads of Hamas sat in Iran and Tehran, not just in Qatar and not just in Turkey. And in that sense, the fact that suddenly Iran is not there for anybody, not even for itself, that will have an impact. It won't change the actual fighting on the ground on the Gaza Strip.
So the region still volatile, anything can happen and everything is open. Thank you so much to our distinguished panel. Thank you all for all of your insights and for joining us today. And in other dramatic news, the IDF announced the recovery of the bodies of 3 slain hostages from Gaza. The bodies of Ofra Keidar, Jonathan Samerano, and Staff Sgt. Shay Levinson were recovered in a joint military and Shin Bet operation overnight. The terror group is now holding 50 hostages, and this includes the bodies of at least 28 confirmed dead by the IDF. And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 22 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside hot temperatures with highs of 31 degrees Celsius or 88 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel. And you can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Lajar Gavelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.